Hi, everyone. Welcome to Storytime. We're so glad you're here. We're going to do our little welcome video to give everyone a chance to get logged in since we had a little bit of a delay in getting started here. But we just wanted to remind you that today we'll be crunching into an apple as part of our Storytime activity. So if you haven't had a chance to grab an apple, go ahead and do that now. If you don't have one where you are, that's okay. You can get an apple and crunch into it anytime by the end of October and share your pictures or your videos or comments right in the comment section below, and we'll count you towards our crunch. So I'm gonna start our welcome video and we hope that you enjoy. Well, we are so glad that you're all here. I'm Miss Renee, and I'm one of the educators at Applewood.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mr. Josh. I'm also one of the educators here at Applewood.
And we also have Sam here today, and she's helping with our sign language interpretation. So we are really excited to have everyone here at Storytime. We've been getting together over the computer like this since March, and this is our last Storytime of the season, so it means a lot to have you join us. So all this year, we've been talking about the ways that we can be a part of our community and support the people around us. And you know what, Mr. Josh, we have all of these apples here. Do you know what's so special about the month of October and apples?
Outside of it being very heavy in apple harvesting on our end here at Applewood, I'm not exactly sure, Miss Renee. Could you possibly tell me what's so special about October?
I would love to. So October is actually National Farm to School Month, which is a time where we celebrate all of the people who grow food and ship food and prepare food and get local foods from farmers all around our area into school lunches, which is something that we all appreciate. So believe it or not, everything that we've been talking about since the beginning of March all ties into what we're going to be talking about with apples today, because we've talked about how filling out this census is an important part of being in your community, because that actually goes towards things like getting money for school lunches and providing programs where farmers can get paid to give their produce to schools. We've talked about working together when we read Wake Up Farm, which is everyone working hard to get the work done and everyone putting in their part of things. But we've talked about using our senses, our sense of taste and smell and sight, and all of those senses to appreciate the world around us and be in touch with our community. And we're going to do that today when we crunch. We've talked about seeing an issue and coming together to solve it. And just like when people went like, hey, there are all these farmers who are growing really good food. Let's make sure that their food is getting to the people who need them, like the kids in our communities who are eating our school lunches. And we've talked about more as well, but it's really exciting to have that as part of our story time. So that's what it all has to do with apples. So, Mr. Josh, will you tell us a little bit more about what it has to do with Applewood and the Motts?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's important to know that we at Applewood make sure that we want to give all the foods that we grow at Applewood back to the community. And this is something CS and Ruth love to do. So they grew their own food as well. And they made sure that any of the food that they grew was either used by them or was given back to the community. And like I said just a second ago, this is something we still really, really love to do at Applewood. Any produce that we grow here at Applewood, we try to give back to the community, whether it's something that we freshly picked, like peppers, or something that we grew in our, like peppers that we would grow in our demonstration garden, or if we were to pick a bushel of apples from our apple orchard, we try to give them back to the community. So for example, we actually were able to give out some apples to some local schools recently. And this is just a really small example of how we try to make sure we can give back to the community as much as possible. Because we want to make sure that everybody can have a little taste of Applewood, even if they can't get out to Applewood. So we're actually going to learn in the book today a little bit more about growing locally, which is something that's super important. It's really cool if you've ever been to like a farmer's market. I don't know if you know what a farmer's market is, but basically it's if you were to go and there's all sorts of different local farmers that bring all sorts of different local fun foods. So you have some vegetables, you probably have some fruits, all sorts of different things. So we're going to kind of talk about something along those lines today, but specifically with apples, since this is Apple Crunch Month. So let's talk about what you can do when you do grow those apples. How does that sound, Miss Renee?
That sounds awesome because I know there's lots of stuff that you can do with apples. So do you have any examples for us?
Well, I'm glad that you asked. So I mentioned that growing our own foods and sharing them with the community is important, but what are some of those things that you can do with the foods you get back from the community? So one thing that we like to do at Applewood, and we do it occasionally throughout the year, or we do it for some special events, is we actually like to make apple cider. And while we don't make apple cider to drink because it takes a couple more steps than what we do, but we do like to be able to start it and show how it gets started. So actually, Miss Renee, I think we have a video of that. Doesn't that sound pretty cool?
That sounds like a lot of fun, and you can be on the lookout for it because when we read the story, it's going to talk about cider a little bit more.
Absolutely. So this is just the very basic steps. There's some more things you would need to do to really turn it into apple cider, some cooking processes, but just a general idea of what you would do to make some apple cider. And when you get it at the store, you have to remember that they do this with thousands and maybe even millions of apples. And I know millions a big number, but they need a lot of apples to make a little bit of apple cider. So, all right, let me share the video and we can take a look at what it takes to make apple cider. All right, can everybody see it? Thumbs up. Good. All right, let's play the video.
Okay, so today we're actually using some crab apples that grew in our orchard here at Applewood. Believe it or not, there are actually crab apples that you can eat. So we're going to mash these up in the masher right here. Okay, here we go. can see all the apple mash, and that makes it easier to turn it into cider. Here is the apple mash. So now that it's all been smushed like that, we can put it into our apple press to squeeze out the juice for the cider. It's okay that there are seeds and stems in here, because this will all be filtered before anybody drinks it. Okay, so we've put these wooden presses on top of the mash, and I'm gonna stack some blocks on top of here, and all of this will add extra pressure to press down the mash. Okay, so we have our press all set up, and now we're gonna start pressing out the cider. So come out the bottom there. All right, so we're gonna tilt this just a little bit here, and there we go.
All right. So that was just a super small sample size of what it takes to make apple cider. That looked like hard work, Miss Renee. That was you, right, Miss Renee, doing all that hard work in there?
It was me that time, and I know we've all gotten a chance to do it a little bit, and it was fun watching our welcome video because we saw sometimes when we were tasting apples, and I think there was maybe one other story time where we've done the apple mashing and pressing, but it's hard work, and you saw only a little bit of cider came out there. So in our book, it will tell us a little more about that. So are we ready to read our book now?
I definitely want to learn more about apple cider, Miss Renee.
All right, so today the book that we're reading, it's called Fall Apples, Crisp and Juicy, and it's by Martha EH Rustad. So as we're reading, be on the lookout for what happens with these apples. Okay, so here's our first page. It says, Chapter 1, Apples in Fall. Look, colorful leaves blow in the breeze. The air feels cooler. It is fall. Fall is a good time to visit an apple orchard. Fall is a good time to pick apples. Crunch! I bite through the red skin. The crisp white flesh tastes sweet. Juice drips down my chin. Surprise! Tiny dark seeds hide inside the core. There you go. All right, chapter 2, How Apples Grow. Plop! An apple seed falls into the soil. Roots grow down, a stem grows up. Drip! Just enough rain helps the seed become a sprout. Just enough sunlight helps the sprout become a tree. There you go, you can see the 3 steps. When an apple seed grows into a tree, its apples are different from the apple that made the seed. To grow a certain kind of apple, orchards attach a stem from one tree to the roots of another. Then they grow together. And that's something we actually do at Applewood. We have what are called grafts of different trees, and it's one of the ways that we can keep growing some of our traditional kinds of heritage apples that you can't find at the grocery store. All right, next steps. Green leaves bud and spread. Leaves soak up warm sunlight. Sunlight becomes food for the growing tree. Sniff! I smell the sweet flowers. In the spring, white and pink apple blossoms bloom. Buzz. Bees drink nectar from apple flowers. Pollen from the flowers stick to their bodies. Bees spread pollen from tree to tree. And at Applewood, we actually have a pollinator garden right next to the orchard and honeybees that are just down a little bit from there so that those bees can help our apple trees grow. Pollen from another tree fertilizes the flowers. Then their petals fall. Tiny green fruitlets form. During the summer, fruitlets grow into big apples. Pickers harvest apples in fall. Ripe apples pile up. And that is what has been happening at Applewood. All right, now the chapter you've all been waiting for. Chapter 3, Using Apples. Let's visit the orchard's kitchen. Bakers peel, core, and cut apples to make pies. Ding! The pie is done. It smells like cinnamon and baked apples. My teeth crush the crisp crust. And this says about half of the US apple crop is eaten fresh. People make the rest into jelly, cider, juice, vinegar, apple butter, applesauce, or pie filling. Let's make cider. Whir! The grinder turns, it smashes the apples into pulp. Squish! The press squeezes the apple pulp. Cider trickles out. So that's like what we saw in the video, although this apple press and masher are all combined into one, and it kind of looks like it's electric. So I think they got some extra help that we didn't. We drink the cider. It is cloudier than apple juice. It tastes sweet and tart. Yum. So apple juice makers heat and filter cider to make juice. That's one of the things that makes it different than cider. All right, time to say goodbye. Goodbye, orchard. Let's visit again next fall. So as we get to our last story time of the year, we definitely wanted to have that chance to say goodbye, but we're not done yet, right, Mr. Josh?
Definitely not done yet. Hey, Miss Renee, before we move on, can you tell me what some of your favorite apple treats are?
Ooh, some of my favorite apple treats.
Or things to do with apples, like a top 3.
Okay, well, I actually love apple pie. So I was excited that the book talked about that. But I also like to have apple butter, which is kind of like a jam. And I like to put that on biscuits or on an English muffin. And then I really like cider a lot as well. Do you have a favorite one, Mr. Josh?
It's hard to beat apple pie. My dad makes like the best apple pie in the whole wide world, arguably. I know there's probably a lot of parents out there that would love to say their apple pie is the best. Maybe we have an apple pie bake-off when everything gets back to normal. That would be pretty fun. I like apple butter as well. We talked a little bit about growing local. So a local bakery in Saginaw actually called Spatz's Bread. They're like my favorite bread ever. It's the crispiest, crunchiest bread. I love to put some apple butter on that. It is super, super good. I think those are my 2 main ones. I love applesauce too. Applesauce is really good. With a little bit of cinnamon, it really hits the spot. Those are probably my 3 favorite.
That's great. Well, it talked about this a little bit in the book, and I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but the really fun thing is that there's so many different types of apples and you can do different things with different apples. So I actually have a few examples from our orchard at Applewood. So we have about 29 different varieties of apples and 71 trees that grow there. And you saw in the apple cider video that we were using a type of crab apple that's called a hislop. And I also have to show you today another little crab apple that's called a transcendent. And to compare that, we also have these really big apples. Wolf Rivers and 20-ounce Pippins are some of the biggest apples you'll find. And you can see both of these grow in our orchard. You'll
You eat
also
them both, right, Miss Renee? Sorry to interrupt, but
oh yes, you can eat both of these. Although the 20-ounce Pippins are really good for baking, but I like to eat them sometimes too, just because it's so much fun. And then two other varieties that you might not see at the grocery store, but that are pretty fun. One is called a winter banana, and it's called a winter banana because when they're really ripe, they kind of have a little bit of a banana taste to them. And then this is one of my favorite apples, and it's also one of Mr. Josh's favorite. It's called a golden russet, and it's kind of a brownish golden color. It doesn't look very pretty, but it tastes delicious, and I think it tastes like honey when they're really sweet.
absolutely. They are my favorite apple by far. And I just introduced my parents to them the other day, and now they're their favorite apples. So they're pretty amazing. Miss Renee, you mentioned we have 29 varieties of apples. That's a lot of apples. So Great Lakes Apple Crunch month or day, either one you can do, takes place in a couple different states. Should we take a look at some of those states?
Yeah, because I think, we think a lot of times about apples growing in Michigan, but that we have some neighboring states that also grow a lot of fruit.
Absolutely. So Great Lakes Apple Crunch month or day, whichever one you're participating in, takes place in states that surround the Great Lakes. So one of those states is Minnesota. We got Wisconsin right here. We have Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. So these are the main states that participate in the Great Lakes Apple Crunch Day. So all of these states surround the Great Lakes. So that's why it's called the Great Lakes Apple Crunch. So if we have 29 varieties in this tiny little area right here, can you imagine how many varieties of apples there probably is in the world? There's probably so many. All right, I'll stop sharing.
So now that we have all of these different varieties of apples, what should we do with them, Mr. Josh?
I think it might be time to crunch.
I think it might be time to crunch too. I have a special crunching partner with me today.
A special crunching guest?
Yes.
Oh man, that's exciting.
Ooh. This is my daughter, Mira, and she's gonna crunch an apple with us. Mira, which one do you want? This one? All right, Mr. Josh, how are we gonna do this? Lead us through our crunch.
I think what we should do really quickly is take some observations of the apple just before, so we can get our senses going before we bite into it. So what are some distinguishing features of your apple, Miss Renee?
Well, mine is kind of a brownish yellow color, and it actually feels kind of papery.
Mine does too. So we have the same apple, but mine has a little hue of red to it. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but that just shows you that apples, like people, are all unique, but they are all equally amazing. So I think on 3, let's take a bite.
Sounds good.
3, 2, 1, crunch.
Mmm.
Now you're going to have to wait for us to chew through these before we can continue.
This sure does taste good. How was your apple, Mira? Pretty good.
So we learned all sorts of stuff today. Learned a little bit about apple cider, a little bit about how harvesting apples works. These are all some things that we like to do at Applewood. And it's important to know that growing food in the local community is super, super important in giving back to community and making it a better place for everybody, because local tends to be very, very good. Something you should try to lean towards as much as you possibly can. So These local Applewood apples are pretty delicious. If you go to any of your local apple orchards, some of them have varieties of their own that you may not see at the store as well. So these are all some really fun things. Apples are a very fun thing, that's for sure.
I sure enjoy them. Well, as we're wrapping up here, I wanted to say thank you again to everyone who's participated in Storytime. And we've had a lot of people help us out since March to make these story times virtual. So if you're missing us during these next few months and you want to go back and see some story times, they are all available on our website, and the link will be put in the comments there. But you can go to ruthmottfoundation.org and click on the Visit Applewood link to get content for all of our virtual programs, not just Storytime. You might find some other fun things there. And we also hope that you'll take a few minutes to fill out the survey so that we can learn a little bit more about how we're doing and what you're getting out of these programs. We are so glad that we got to be a part of your day, and so glad that we got to be a part of everything that's been going on these last few months. We hope that you all take care, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, everybody. Miss Renee, you want to go out on a crunch?
Sure, let's do one more crunch.
Ready? We'll go out in 3, 2, 1.